Hello everyone. In this video, I'm going to discuss today's most important article that was published in the Economic Times. So before I really go into the analysis part, I would like to give you the outline of this video, like how I have formatted this video. So first, I will discuss the context behind the article. Second, I will go for the vocabulary part that were really difficult and have the probability of coming into the exams. And third is the concept that the author actually used while writing this article. Second last would be the main body of this article, like what actually the author wrote. And finally would be the my analysis, like what I really understood by the article and how I really see this article by critically examining this. So without further ado, let's start. So the title of this article is Thanks Government of India, but we will be self-reliant. This article is written by Dheeraj Nair, who is the current chief economist at the Vedanta Group. So the context behind this article is that recently on 22nd May 2020, PM Narendra Modi announced Atma Bharat plan, and in the line of this same plan, this author has actually tried to critically examine that whether this plan actually follows the practical approach or not. So that is the idea behind the article. Now coming on to the vocabulary part, I have found like 10-12 words which are really important and difficult also. So first was fortnight. Fortnight is basically 2 weeks, like 14 days basically. And second is prosperous. Prosperous basically to flourish financially. Third is overarching. Overarching basically to embrace something completely or taking care of something over a certain limit. Fourth is kudos. Kudos is basically congrats, because sometimes when someone mentioned you that they have achieved something, so people say that kudos to that. So like it is saying congratulations for that. Next is a utopia. Utopia is basically a perfect world, imaginative place. Next is largest. Largest basically to give something to someone. Next is friend. Friend is basically to take care or look after of oneself without the help of others. And next is worst of all. It is not basically a word, it is a idiom, and which means that a person who have all the disadvantages. Next is eminently. Eminently basically means popular in a particular sphere or area. And the final is gamut. Gamut is basically a range of something or scope of something. So now coming on to the concept that were discussed in the article and are really, really important. First is autarky. It is basically means when a country or a state is economically self-dependent or self-sufficient, just like we were before 1991. And if you talk about any country at the present time who is following autarky, is North Korea, because it doesn't trade with any other country. Second is Gandhian economics. Gandhian economics basically based on the Gandhian principles, which were nationalism, Swadeshi, and protectionism. So that is that. And third is pump and priming. Pump and priming is basically you can say that physical part of a physical policy which aims at providing stimulation of the economic activity by injecting investment. Fourth is socialism. Socialism is basically when a group of organization actually controls the whole production, distribution, and all the exchange process in the country. And there are a lot of types to it, because sometimes people confuse socialism with communism, but it is not actually true. Communism is actually a subset of socialism, and communism we socialism in the rawest form is currently pursuing in the Cuba, and communist is in the China. And like you can say that because mostly all the organizations in China are wholly or partly controlled by the government. So that is a part of that is a kind of socialism. And finally is the conservative economics, which basically governs around the concept of free trade, deregularization of economy, lower taxes, and privatization. So now coming on to the final body of this article and how actually author has tried to explain this. So he started by saying that India's economic goal have changed in the last fortnight from 5 trillion economy to the Atmanirbhar Bharat. So basically, he's saying, pointing out the fact that for the, you can say, the COVID-19, we were actually planning for the 5 trillion economy. But since then, our objective has changed from that to Atmanirbhar Bharat, or basic in English is self-reliant India. He says that, of course, in the end, what everyone wants is a prosperous India, but where nobody is left behind in poverty, which is like obvious. But there are many pathways and several speed gears to get there. So he's saying that there is not only a one way or a one road to achieving that. There are a lot of other ways to get the same result. He says that that is why the overarching political economy narrative matters. He says that it sets a context, ambition, and direction for policy. Along with the Atmanirbhar Bharat, what we need is a Atmanirbhar Bharatiya. So he is saying that until we are having a Atmanirbhar Bharatiya, basically this self-reliant Indian, we won't be able to actually achieve the main objectives of Atmanirbhar Bharat plan. He later goes on to explain that just as Atmanirbhar Bharat does not by definition means autarky and import substitution. Finance Minister for not raising trade barriers in her economic package. Atmanirbhar Bharat does not mean a utopia of millions of self-reliant villages. So he is basically kind of describing the whole concept of Atmanirbhar Bharat and and at the same time rejecting the preconceived notions that are right now revolving around the Atmanirbhar Bharat concept. So he's saying that it doesn't mean uh, import substitution. It doesn't, basically what he's trying to say is that it doesn't mean that we will start having a closed economy again, just we were having before 1991. So we will not follow import substitution or autarky. He is outrightly rejecting those concepts, and and he is kind of sarcastically saying that thanks to Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman for not raising trade barriers in her economic package. He later says that India does not need either the economies of socialism or the economies of the Gandhian variety. He has also pointed out that what it needs is a paradigm of old-fashioned conservative economies where individual, business, and civil society do not depend on the state for the largesse or support. They are Atmanirbhar or self-reliant in that sense. So basically, what he is pointing out is that uh, what the actual meaning of Atmanirbhar here would be that to make the individual or business units or civil society actually self-dependent and not primarily depend on the state for their kind of monetary or any kind of support. So that is the rawest definition of the Atmanirbhar. Later he says that given India's long history of a dominant state and poverty, Atmanirbhar may seem like an unrealistic and unrealizable ask. So he says that we have a long history of dominant state and poverty. So government asking that its citizens and business corporations and civil society to be self-reliant is like something too much of a ask. He says that the state will not let go and citizen will continue to demand and expect goods and services, either free or high or usually subsidized. So he's saying that obviously state will not let go and the citizens will also keep on demanding and expecting goods and services. Either it will be free of cost or it will be hugely subsidized. It says that it is a damaging embrace. It is damaging embrace because too much of a care is sometimes very destructive. He says that Most vulnerable citizens are often left to fend for themselves. Nevertheless, a point brought out sharply in the ongoing crisis of migrant labor. Okay. Later, he says that the state uses the pressure of demand from citizens as an excuse to keep a tight control on the economic activity, taking an overly extractive and redistributive view of the wealth creating sectors. So basically, what he's saying is that sometimes, given the excuse that citizens are demanding, states actually try to keep a tight control over the uh, economic activities that are going in the wealth creating sector. He says that India ends up with the worst of all the world: inadequate and poor quality delivery of public goods and services, and continued in poverty. So what he is really trying to point out is that since states are following this kind of a behavior, India is actually uh, having all the worst part of it, because of it, it is having an inadequate and poor quality of delivery of public goods and services, and continued in poverty. He later goes on to explain that the current crisis may be an inflection point. Inflection point is basically a point where a certain thing start to change its behavior. He says that the current crisis may be an inflection point. On the one hand, the Modi government has shown clearly that it recognizes the limit of government capacity, at least in physical terms. Even in a most dire health come economic crisis, it has refused to burst the deficit. On the other hand, quite remarkably, non-government civil society has shown that it can step up to aid its most vulnerable fellow citizens in distress, providing food, clothes, cash, or transport. Or both sides are ready to break out the embrace. Later, he explains that the government would have to take the lead. In a country with India's per capita income, it would be unreasonable to expect the government to offer no support to the disadvantaged, which is obviously because per capita income in India is very low. So you cannot expect from the government that it would outrightly stop giving financial support to the disadvantaged. He says that, but instead of trying insufficient provisions of semi-public and indeed private goods and services, the government should move all its support to a single direct cash grant linked to inflation, sufficient to cover all the basic necessities to survive, but not high enough to de-incentivize taking up job. It is very important. So what he is proposing is that government, instead of giving inefficient provisions to the disadvantaged, it should directly give cash grants which will be linked to the inflation rate. So it is here is important that he has mentioned that the cash grant should be linked to the inflation, because what happens in most of the cases that uh, disadvantaged people get the cash benefit, but that cash benefit is very low in comparison to the uh, goods goods or the products that they will be buying from the market, because because government will be giving the grant assuming the price will remain constant, right? So he has mentioned that the cash grant should be linked to the inflation rate as well, and he has says that he has actually supported this argument that the government should give the cash benefits, but it should be only sufficient to cover all the basic necessity to survive, and not enough to de-incentivize taking up the job, because if a government will keep on giving the cash benefits, why would anyone would bother to actually take up a job and do something? So it is a kind of logic. Later, he explains that the highly evolved system of Jan Dhan, Aadhaar, and mobile, the Jam Trinity, makes this eminently feasible, which is like a valid point. He says that the transition can take place over a period of 12 to 24 months and will need to be planned properly. Simultaneously, we need a gamut of structural reforms that enable the continued rise of entrepreneurship and investment, particularly in job intensive sectors. So, what is saying that this whole cash transfer would be easy because we have already uh, kind of a uh, transfer mechanism for transferring the cash benefit to the main beneficiaries basically, because we have already Jam Trinity where we have covered a lot of people under this whole mechanism. So he's saying that government should doing that also, but simultaneously it should also focus on this on bringing more solid structural reforms. And not he has particularly mentioned which sector they should mainly focus, because he is saying that uh, we need a gamut of structural reforms that enable the continued rise of entrepreneurship and investment, particularly in job intensive sectors. Because he is saying that we, uh, we should keep on promoting the entrepreneurship culture and keep on investing in startups and all, and basically startups of those sector which will be job intensive, because that will not only boost up the startup culture in that sector, but it will also reduce the unemployment rate basically, because since those sectors will be job intensive, they have to have uh, hire more people. So it kind of a two-edged sword. He says that the recent reform announced made by the government, including in the previous untouched domain of agriculture, seems to suggest that there is a much great appetite to boost growth through structural reform and not pump priming. So what he's saying is that since in the 5-day announcement of finance minister, they have also covered the agricultural sector, and he has said that a lot can be done by bringing structural reforms and not by pump priming, which we were doing earlier. He says that earlier this government has also brought down the corporate tax rate to the level of many Asian countries to boost investment, which suggests the government recognizes that a lower tax rate will eventually lead to higher revenues. And the best way for corruption and a crony-free India is to end state intervention in private economic activity. So he has another drawn to an important point. He says that because we have seen that recently government has brought down the corporate tax from 25% to 22%, and he has said that by doing that we have actually at par if in terms of if we compare our corporate taxes with the other East Asian countries. So it will also help us in bringing FDI in our country. You can see from that perspective also. And it not only that, he has said that it will also help us generating more revenue. And another good point is that since the tax rate has come down, there will be less incentive for them to hide actually the tax. So it will actually reduce the corruption as well. And he says that it will kind of make a crony-free India, because they actually had pointed out in the economic survey of this year also that government is following crony capitalism and we have to get rid of that. So he's saying that also. And one of a method of doing that, he said that state intervention should be minimized in the private economic activity. And lastly, he says that if the average Bharatiya is unable to become Atmanirbhar, the government will easily and rapidly achieve the goal of Atmanirbhar Bharat and a 5 trillion economy. So he's saying that if the average Indian is becomes self-reliant, then government or country as a whole will automatically become Atmanirbhar, and maybe we will also achieve 5 trillion economy by 2024. And finally, my take on this and what I have understood from this article and what I don't agree with the author. First and the foremost point is that he has proposed cash transfer or cash benefit. So, which I think is not entirely a good idea, because currently we have only 400 million Jan Dhan account when we are having like 1.3 billion population. So it is like it is not even covered 50% of the population, and we have 500 million smartphones users, 100 million UPI users, and therefore many will not either get the money and will not be able to use it. What I'm saying is that we don't have enough of a financial inclusion in our country, which by some default author has assumed it. So because not because in order to open Jan Dhan account, you have to have Aadhaar card, which many people don't have, because they are living in like rural areas on far away place. So that is that. And sometimes, and there is one more point, that cash transfer is not always beneficial, because sometimes people misuse it and not use for the right purposes. And the final point is the amount that generally gets transferred is very small, that it is like good for nothing basically. So, and because if you take the example of recent cash transfer that has been given by the government under the Garib Kalyan Yojana. So it has basically transferred 500 rupees for the next 3 months in the Jan Dhan accounts of the rural women. So like 500 rupees for 3 months is like practically nothing. So cash transfer could not be the only way out of this. So that was my take on this, and this is what I understood from this article, and I think that's all. Now I'm signing off.